Good morning. My name is Bob Davison. I'm 54 years old. I spent 26 years in the Navy. I'm retired. And the last 2 years, I've been in the hospital. I'm a diabetic. And my numbers were between 700 and 800. Last November 2019, I started taking the JC Tonic, and I had no idea what I was taking it because my wife was giving it to me in the rehab in the nursing home. My wife will be telling you more about the facts, as I had almost no memory of the last 2 years. My wife will be kicking in and telling you more of the facts, as I have no idea what was going on.
When we retired, we had noticed some of his health declining. This was back in 2012. In 2015, he was diagnosed with early onset dementia, with diabetes, cirrhosis of the liver, of course, severe PTSD, stage 2 kidney disease. He had RLS, which is restless leg syndrome, high cholesterol, vertigo, neuropathy, severe anxiety, erosion of the esophagus. It was pretty bleak. He started treatments and has been on consistently about 27 medications for these various illnesses. In November of 2018, during a really bad PTSD episode, he was kicking and flailing, and he fell off the bed and injured his leg. His mental health had already been declining pretty much, but when he just couldn't communicate to me that he had fallen until like the next day, when he had a lump on his leg, and the nurse, we had home health at the time, and the home health nurse checked it, and she said she thought it would be okay, but the following morning he couldn't even walk. So we took him to the hospital, and fortunately the doctor that diagnosed him said that he had a very rare condition called compartment syndrome, where it usually happens to athletes, but he had damaged his leg, and he was bleeding internally because he was on blood thinners, and part of the muscle had died. So they had to rush him to a different hospital where he had to be put on coagulants to thicken up his blood, otherwise he would not have survived surgery. And when he had the surgery, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, done on an emergency basis. And this was the first ever surgery that he had had. And when he came out, it was like his dementia had advanced like 10 years. He couldn't tell you where he was, who he was. He couldn't feed himself. He couldn't make a sentence that made any sense. We tried to explain to him what was going on. He wound up developing an allergy to the tape used in the vacuum used on his leg, and he couldn't even communicate that. All we knew is that he kept ripping out his IV and his wound vac, and we just had to figure out on our own by how red his skin got and how irritated it was, why he was pulling out his IVs and wound vac. From there, because of his mental condition and his inability to walk, and he is 6'4" and I'm 5'1", so I was very little help physically to what I could do for him, and our house was not handicap equipped. So they sent us to a rehab facility, which was actually a nursing home for intense therapy, and he did that for 3 months till March of 2019. And once he started, and then we had home health, but they put all the equipment in our home. And in 2019, he wasn't also wheelchair bound at this time. So when he came home in March of 2019, we continued physical therapy through the home health. We had a hospital bed. of course, the wheelchair, the shower seat, all of the handicap equipment the VA provided for us, and also for his sleep apnea, the machine, the oxygen, all of that he was on. So about May, during his therapy sessions, he started complaining of pain in his right hip, and we just couldn't understand. And during this whole time, of course, he had not advanced very much mentally, so he wasn't driving, wasn't reading, he was basically just sleeping all the time, and he wasn't moving very much, even though he could put some pressure on his leg and walk with a walker. He still had developed a pain from the back to the hip, so which we found out his L4 and L5 was messed up. So it turns out that they started therapy on that, and in between, he wound up being admitted during 2019 to the hospital 6 times for pneumonia, a total of 10 hospitalizations between that time of 2019. With 3 of those putting us back in the same nursing home for 2 to 3 month stays, during which time they worked with his cognitive ability, but still he couldn't drive. He was diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia. He has a form of Parkinson's, and of course all his pulmonary problems. He couldn't write the numbers on a clock. He could not read. Most of his doctors had never even held a conversation with him because he was unable to hold a conversation. They would just talk to me. And like my aunt mentioned, we were sent home in September of 2019 because they needed the space. The nursing home had provided me a space to stay with him in the same room. I would not leave him alone, so we were there 24/7, and we had a room to ourselves. But we were on a veterans wing, and we were going to need it for another veteran, so we decided to go home with home health. And at which point I was taking him everywhere, loading him in and out of the truck with the manual wheelchair. It was very difficult because of our height difference and weight difference. And in November, like my aunt mentioned, she reached out to me and we met for lunch, and she gifted us a bottle of tonic. And she said that she had been following my updates on my husband's recovery and how he was doing, which was pretty bleak at this point. Also, during that same month of November, the VA sent us on an appointment to Harlingen to see if my husband qualified for a electric wheelchair. They had already put the ramp outside the house, and if he got the wheelchair, then they would also put a lift on the truck to pick the wheelchair up and everything, so that I wouldn't have such a hard time transporting him back and forth to the doctors. When we went to Harlingen, I kind of felt like I was going to have to convince the doctor that we needed the electric wheelchair, and he basically told me, I read his record, I already know, his cirrhosis is pretty bad. He's not going to be able to even drive himself on the electric wheelchair, so the only condition that he would give us an electric wheelchair was that he put a control on the back so that I could walk behind it and control it should he not be able to do it. Basically giving me a year, maybe 2, that my husband would live. This was in November, the same month that he started the tonic. And he had just had blood work, which indicated that his A1C, his diabetic A1C, was at 10. So He started the tonic to every day. This is very key, because it's one thing to buy a bottle of tonic, it's another thing to stay on it. Once we finished that bottle, we committed to ourselves that we were going to just put it in a budget, put it on our budget like it was another bill, because we started to see a lot of the benefits coming, like his mental clarity. It was just like little by little I was getting my husband back. He has gone from, he doesn't remember most of the 2 years. It was really super traumatic, but basically when they issued us the electrical chair, they issued it with, this is how it's going to be for the rest of your life kind of thing.
Go ahead and get comfortable, stay at home.
Yeah.
This is the way it's going to be.
Yeah. And the first month of the tonic, we started seeing like mental clarity. And it just, even our kids noticed, because they came from Louisiana for Thanksgiving, and they came again for Christmas, and they were just like wowed at what a difference, because he was not participating in conversation. He was in the bed sleeping all the time, and a lot of people saw him down, where he would just be in the wheelchair with his head down all the time. And so when we repeated his blood work in early February, we got his A1C back, and it had gone from 10 to 6.7, at which point he was able to get, at 10, they won't issue you a prescription for eyeglasses, because with your diabetes that high, your vision changes daily. So we were able to get his glasses, his dental work done. He was, in March, we had gone in November to talk about back surgery, because it was really affecting his mobility. And his primary care doctor at the VA told him that he was crazy. There was no way that he could survive surgery. And fast forward 3 months, when he saw all the blood work changes, he signed off on the surgery. He sent us to a cardiologist, who also signed off on the surgery, said everything was fine. We went to the kidney specialist, and she's like, I don't see any progression. They did a hepatic blood panel, and all of his numbers he still has cirrhosis, let me be clear on that. That does not reverse itself. But all of his numbers are back to normal and not of any concern to the doctor at this point. The one thing that I would like to stress is that my husband is completely back mentally. He doesn't have a lot of memory, but he's driving, reading, writing, conversing, interacting. He's back to himself. I literally have my husband back. I don't know a better way to put it. I know that Anthony's going to post pictures, and I do have some video of him in this condition. And I think once you get a full picture of what it's done for him, that it would motivate people to at least try it. The key being, you have to take it like you take your vitamin or medication issued by the doctor. This tonic, it purifies your blood, and in doing so, once you have your blood purified, going through each of your organs, this is a testimonial. His cardiologist, they sent him to a hematologist, all his blood work. They took 14 vials of blood, couldn't find anything wrong with him. It's just crazy to see it on paper, validating what we were seeing with our own eyes. So I would encourage you to go to Jurak.com and look at the ingredients. When my husband was in the hospital, I did that myself. I wrote down every single ingredient, and I researched it myself, and everything were things that could help with all these different ailments. You don't believe it, it could be true. Read it for yourself. My husband is living proof. At the times when his numbers would come back higher, he would take up to 3 ounces a day, which is totally fine. But for most people, 1 ounce will do. I don't know what else to say other than look what we have here. And then go back and look at the pictures of him when he was at his very worst and could not speak for himself and didn't know what was going on. With his diabetic numbers dropping, his doctor did cut his dosage of insulin in half, and we're looking forward to our next visit where the doctor has said he was going to start taking some of the medications away from him that he clearly didn't need anymore. With this pandemic going on, of course, most of our doctor's visits have been by video or over the phone. But we did insist on his pulmonologist, who was the one who saw him for the 6 hospitalizations and other complications that he was having with his lung disease. We insisted to have that one in person, and when we saw the doctor, he walked in the room and my husband stood up and shook his hand, and the doctor was literally walking backwards, and he's like, do you have a twin? And he just couldn't, he's like, I cannot believe it. And he said, he told my husband, dude, last time I saw you, you looked like a slug. Unable to talk, unable to hold his head up. He was in complete shock. And we did tell him about the tonic, as we have told all of our doctors. And all of our doctors have said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because it's obviously working. That is the best testimonial that we can give, and it's living proof. So we encourage.
I wish I could tell you more, but for 2 years I would just basically just have to. I really was.
Yes.
And little by little, I came out of it. So I'm sticking to the tonic.
Yes.
I mean, I truly believe into it.
Yes. And when our friends and family see him now, it's just shocking. If you saw him when he was at his worst, I mean, everybody had him in the grave. Mm-hmm. And I mean, literally 1 foot in the grave. But he's not that way anymore, and it's shocking to see him now because he's so healthy, he's so vibrant, and he's back to the man that I married and missed for so long, for those whole 2 years. So I encourage you to try it, get your loved ones to try it. It can't hurt you, it can only help you, and give it a shot. It worked for us, hopefully it'll work for you.